It's always good to see people keep showing up when we do these. Hopefully that means you're getting some useful information from them. Today's one we've done a couple of times already, but there's a very high level of interest. There was a lot in our new release, and I think people are getting around to digging into it a little bit and want to see a little more information. You know, it's an interesting phenomenon if you sit in a room with a bunch of AVST people and somebody asks them how many software releases we do a year. The answers vary from 1 to 4. And the reason is we have kind of a different way of approaching software. If you look at the numbered releases, 8.5, 8.6, 8.7, which is coming out in a few months, we do about one of those a year. But then we have software updates within those releases. So if you look at 8.5, which came out in August of 2013 with a lot of new features in it, and then we did Software Update 1, which was more of an environment update to support Windows 8 and the new Exchange and those pieces. But then in January, Software Update 2 added a bunch of new integrations and a number of new features. And Update 3 and Update 4, we're still adding either integrations, environment pieces, or some actual features. And then we did in January come out with 8.6. 8.6 Software Update 2 is already out, which added a number of things, capacity and a couple of other things. And like I said, 8.7 is rolling down the road. So it's a pretty busy world at AVST releasing software, and we do these presentations in hopes that you can keep on top of what it is so that at least everything sounds familiar if it's something you're going to be interested in. So if we look at what was in 8.6, this was an interesting mix of big features, new features we're going to talk about. And then we managed to get to the list of software enhancement requests that our existing customers had given us, and added a few enhancements in that area that we'll talk about. And then we did a major capacity increase from 500 ports to 750 ports. And software licensing is a feature of great interest to everyone, getting rid of the dongle. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then there was, again, just a lot of environment enhancements. When you look at unified communications, and you're a company like us that makes software, while a lot of your time goes to building features and keeping on top of the market, an almost equal amount of time is spent making sure that we can fit into the environments that our customers use. So networking environments, operating systems, groupware, the various drivers for the pieces of our product, all of that is quite a bit of work as well. And 8.6 did a lot in that area. We'll talk about most of that. The big thing, of course, in 8.6 was TeamQ. And depending on how long you've been at AVST, you will say, TeamQ, this wonderful new application we have, or you will say, TeamQ, this wonderful application we brought back. Because indeed, this is a bringing back into the fold an application we had about 15 years ago that was very, very successful, very handy, but in all the political pieces of being acquired and moving things around way back then, we lost that application. It was called Desktop Call Manager. But we've now redone Desktop Call Manager, which with an eye to today's markets and kind of how it fits in today's market. And this is an interesting product because it doesn't really fit very neatly in any existing category. So you'll find us using terms like work group call management, call center, knowledge worker group call management, and it's just there is no term that really defines exactly what this is. So let me show you how we came to this kind of the desire to put this back into the market. Call distribution is a big part of what we do. A lot of people will say, oh, AVST, they're that voicemail company, that messaging company, which is certainly true. We've done messaging for years. We're a recognized leader in that space, both replacing legacy voicemail systems in the unified messaging space. We definitely have a very strong messaging component and reputation. But it didn't take us long in this business to figure out that even better than taking a message well would be connecting that call the first time. So call completion is a major focus in what we do in our product today. We're going to talk about a couple of those, and this is one of the new call completion features. So if you think about calls coming in, and we're not going to talk about calls going to individuals. We have other webinars where we talk about our personal assistant, the find me, follow me kind of functionality. In this one, we're going to talk about work groups or groups of people. So you start with, if you have a group of people that handle calls, you certainly have your PBX that can send calls to hunt groups. Every PBX I know of has hunt groups, with the exception of Link, which has response groups, which are fairly similar. But there's a way to kind of distribute calls among users. And you find hunt groups in almost every facility for just simple groups of people that are taking the same kind of calls. At the other end of the spectrum, we have contact centers where we have lots of people, and we have process workers, 100 people doing the same job, and the goal in a contact center is to push those calls through as fast as you can. So, trim another 30 seconds off the call, another 10 seconds off the call. Productivity goes up there. They're the very, very tightly monitored kind of ACD functionality that you find. And most switches have that kind of functionality, and there's a lot of really good third-party products with that. What's left in the middle is kind of this group of people that doesn't fit comfortably in either of those categories. They're not process workers. They're not people that do exactly the same thing. So a contact center just doesn't work very well for them. But at the same time, they don't have exactly the same skill set, so hunt groups don't really do a very accurate job as well. Now, there's a concept called skills-based routing that contact centers used, and that's kind of good. But the problem with these people in these informal work groups is it isn't that they just take calls. They don't take a call, get off the call, take another call. They take calls kind of intermingled with other job duties. So being in an ACD queue doesn't quite hit it either. So what we have is a product for those knowledge worker groups that are just a little different, that don't fit in either of those other two categories. So we have TeamQ, which is an informal kind of call center application. And if you look at kind of what this does, is it focuses on groups where there's a number of users, and it's a small number. You can only have 25 agents logged into a queue at once. And in that queue, these people are handling the same kind of calls, but they have a different skill set. So skills-based routing would be very handy. But that's very difficult to program in. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to use a pull model of call distribution. So ACD is a push model where you hang up the phone and the next call is presented to you. And we can do that actually in TeamQ, and we do occasionally. But the real strength for us is not pushing a call, but letting the agents pull calls by deciding which calls are the correct ones, which ones they can handle, which ones they want to take next, what one makes sense for them to be their next call. And it also lets them take a call and then go do a task associated with that call, and then come back to the queue, look at that queue, and take the next call. So it's a much more flexible way for knowledge worker groups than to have either a hunt group or an actual call center application. And the way we're going to do this is by running a script, asking the caller who they are and what they want, and then displaying that information on the screen. And then the agents can look at that screen and pull those calls, or send those calls to voicemail, or move them to another queue, or do all the management type of functionality by having some information about the call. And then as a next step, we also can do a screen pop once the agent does decide to take that call. So this is just a quick screenshot of the call queue screen. And you can see there's a number of calls in here. And across the top, you have some nice buttons there that tell you sort of what they look like and what they can do. So when a call came in, we ran a script. And I always use a help desk to explain this because it's an easy one to see where the strengths are with something like this. So you have 5 or 6 people in a help desk, and they don't all have the same skills. They can't all handle everything. You've got some people who are experts maybe on the network architecture, some that do Windows and operating system support, some that do applications, some that might just do the telephony piece. So having all the calls go to an ACD queue just doesn't work. And today what a lot of people do, they have a hunt group, and you answer it, and you say, what do you need? Okay, hold on a second. Yeah, can somebody get a call for office support on line 6? So it's getting done, but it's not very effective. This way, we're going to run a script when somebody calls in. We're going to ask them for an identifier, an employee number, a social security number, an account number, any kind of numeric value. We then can go do a data dip and bring back a name associated with that if we'd like as an option. And now we're going to play a menu to them. We get to create whatever menus we want. In this case, I created a menu for IT. And somebody said, I need Windows 7 support. Somebody said, I need network support. And now we pop up those entries on the screen. And at this point, basically, that call is sitting on CX, waiting for an agent. And so you have the ability to have that queue play prompts and music and all those typical call center functions. Now, what I would do as an agent is I would look down and say, okay, I'm a network agent, and there's 2 network calls there, but one of them's on hold. I can't take that one. We'll talk about that in a second. The other network call is what I want. I click on that. I click Take Call. That transfers the call to me. And now that line would blue out, and it would show me on that call. So now all the agents can actually see all the calls that are being processed, and they can see who's taking those calls. When I'm done with that call, I'd hit the hang up button. As soon as I took call, the next call button would actually show hang up, and I would hang up that call. And all of this lets me decide what call is relevant for me. If you notice, Tom G is on a call plus has a call holding. So a call came in. This is a typical support desk, and the first thing Tom said was, reset your system. See if that fixes it. If not, call me back. Then Tom took another call. Now when he sees that call come back in again from Bill W., he really needs to take that. So he highlighted it and he hit hold, and now he's holding that call. So an agent can take a call, hold a call, send it to voicemail for a message, redirect it to another extension or queue. So the ability to manage a queue with a lot more options than just take that call, hang up, and move on to the next call is one of the key strengths with the TeamQ application. And then along with that, we have all the other standard features you'd expect, an agent status screen, some report screens. There's a nice new reporting package coming out in 8.7 that builds up the reporting piece quite a bit, which we'll be doing some webinars on in the near future. What's unique about this is not a server. This is like everything else we do. It's a feature. So you buy this, we turn that feature on your system. It does not require any CTI link to the telephone system at all. This will work on the newest system integrating with Link down to the oldest one connected to a Strata DK through in-band integration. So this is completely independent of the architecture. And that means it's much less expensive than typical options like this, and it's very flexible no matter what your environment is. So if you have these kind of informal work groups, this is something maybe you want to talk to somebody about and see what we can do to help it out. So that's a new feature. So 8.6 has some new features. But like I said, we also got around to that list of things that existing customers wanted us to update, and one of them was our Schedule Express application. So we have Schedule Express, which is an application that allows support for very complex incoming call routing. Many, many different groups, many different hours that we need to take into account, many changes during the day. And while the basic CX system did a pretty good job at that, you could grow too complex for that basic system to handle it, so you would use Schedule Express. And Schedule Express let a customer maintain this answering mode table in an Excel spreadsheet, and then when calls came in, we could process them based on that information. And while it was very, very flexible, it was kind of hard. As it got more full of entries and listings, it was really hard to look at that Schedule Express spreadsheet and understand what was going on. So what we did with 8.6 is we brought all that functionality into the system by creating a new mailbox, a schedule mailbox. So now there is no longer a need to use Schedule Express. We still support Schedule Express. You can still buy Schedule Express. If you're using it today and you're happy with it and you put it in a new location, we're not in any way taking that away. But you can also build almost all the functionality from Schedule Express into the basic system. And it's much easier to see what it's doing. It's much easier to use. And it now works in conjunction with a lot of the other elements in the system. So that ability to do that flexible call routing is what's going on here. And it has a lot of enhanced features, like you have an answer mode for a holiday. You might not want just that day. You might want a day before plus a day after. You really have the ability to preset all these holidays in advance and have your entire year's worth of answering set up. And then we added back in a couple of features that we had lost before, which is the ability for an administrator to put in an override via the telephone. So it used to be, with the Call Express 7.x series, that an administrator could wake up at 4 in the morning and see 3 feet of snow on the ground and grumble and roll over and pick up their mobile phone and call into the system as an administrator and change the answer mode to their inclement weather menu, which maybe said something like, due to the weather, we're operating on limited conditions. And, it would be a different menu because the functionality would be different. And that disappeared in 7.x. And it's now back in 8.6. So you now have the ability from the administration client or from the mobile admin client, and now also from the telephone user interface, to change how that system gets answered based on what's going on outside. And it's a very flexible system. And if you have Schedule Express and you upgrade to 8.6, there's an import feature that will take what you have in Schedule Express and bring it into those menus. There'll be a little tuning up you need to do, but it does a very good job of moving you to the new method if that's what you choose to do. However, if you upgrade to 8.6 and want to keep Schedule Express, that's available as well. So beyond just features and kind of enhancement requests, we are constantly growing 8.6. And the reason is the consolidation movement in larger enterprises, where they're consolidating their infrastructure for more control, lower cost of ownership, certainly swept through the data world, and now it's sweeping through the telephony world as well. So we have lots of customers with 15 or 20 sites who want to consolidate and compress those down into a single CX system, which we have a lot of wonderful features, not the least of which is that scheduling mailbox we just talked about, that make this very easy to do. So we're continually growing the system. So with 8.6, we increased the capacity from 500 to 752. You'll actually find the number 750 in a lot of literature as well, but the way we sell our licenses at 752 is actually the accurate number. And now users can take this above. We already have, I think, 6 customers that I know of that are in the 600-plus port range using this. So it is definitely something whose time has come. And at the same time, we also increased the amount of ASR resources we can run on a single call server from 96 up to 120. And some of these were done with 8.6 software update 2. So these might be fairly new to some of you, might not have seen these yet. And as we look at 8.7, my guess is there'll be some more capacity increases as well. It's a pretty much driving factor in our business today in order to cover what enterprises are asking for. So also in the category of things customers have asked us for, in this case for years and years, is to get rid of the dongle. Our software security method required a USB dongle be plugged into the server, which was problematic and just not popular. So we now, as an option, have another way of doing software-based licensing that simply uses the cloud. Instead of having a dongle plugged into the system server can do a phone home kind of application, go out to a site on the web and verify that's a legitimate system, and CX will start right up. So you don't need that dongle. We still support a dongle for those customers that don't want to install CX where there's internet access, but for those that are comfortable with internet access, you actually can use the Sentinel Cloud version as well. The way this works is when CX starts up, it goes and gets a license. That license ages, and every now and then CX goes out and refreshes it. If it can't see the cloud when it goes to refresh, it does not turn the system off. There's a cache built in, and that cache varies depending on how long it's been running. If the system's been running for a reasonable length of time, the cache is about 8 days. So you have plenty of time to be able to go figure out why we can't get to the internet anymore. So this is a very popular method. I would say 90% of our systems now, at least, are going in with software-based license. Another environment enhancement was VMware. We already had VMware support. You could run all of our components in VMware, and we're VMware certified as VMware ready. But what we did in this pass was we took advantage of the VMware features, not just being able to run on the platform, but actually using the features of VMware. So VMotion to move a live machine. So you can take a call processor that's actively handling calls, use VMotion to move it over to another host. Maybe you're doing that for troubleshooting or to do a patch on the host or something along those lines. And then with high availability, we actually can restart one of our servers on the same host. So we have an image of that host, so if something goes wrong, we can simply restart it right there. And fault tolerance is the full failover. So we can actually have a shadow instance of VM on a separate host, and now if let's say the system server is running and it fails, the shadow one takes over automatically. So automatic failover for the redundancy. So all of those features, plus dynamic resource allocation, now work and supported on 8.6. You'll find a lot of our competitors, while they do support putting their software on VMware, they don't support these features. So it's really not very useful in the VM world to have their systems running there. We upgraded our servers so that we now support Windows Server 2012, and we actually ship 2012 on the servers that we provide. On the servers we provide, we ship the Telco edition, which is the exact standard edition. You patch it the same and everything else. It's just not licensed to have all the other functionality, all the other kind of servers running on it. So it makes it less expensive to deploy a telephony product. We upgraded our support on the RightFax side to 10.6. We've always had a very close relationship with RightFax. We used to be the same company years ago before we split. And so almost every time they came out with a new version of software, you would find us in the labs and them in their labs working on the compatibility pieces. 10.6 was a pretty big release for them, so we had a little bit of extra work to do. But now with 10.6 RightFax, they now support Exchange 2013 and SharePoint and Office 2013 for accurate document rendering. And basically, they brought this system up to support all of the current environments. They did remove support for clients on Windows XP. And there's still a few of those around there that you might need to be aware of that, but there's not a lot of that out in the enterprises anymore. A lot of new features in 8.6 besides just environment changes, and it's a fairly major release. It required a lot of testing on the RightFax side, I'm sure, and then a bit of testing on our side as well. And what also came out with this that is interesting is a change kind of in how fax might be deployed. Typically, you put a fax server in, you put fax cards in that connect to the outside line or to the PBX, and when a fax is sent or received, it goes through your telephony infrastructure. Now, those cards might support direct CO lines coming in, like DIDs for incoming fax, but there's still a outside call line card RightFax kind of chain involved in that, which is okay if you have very regular fax use. But there were a lot of customers who on bid day sent or received thousands of pages of faxes, and the rest of the month, 2 or 3 faxes a day or 10 faxes a day. And they unfortunately had to equip their servers with the number of cards and ports, to support the maximum amount that they had to be able to receive. So what RightFax has now done is they've introduced RightFax Connect, which removes the resources from the enterprise and moves them into their services in the cloud. So now today, you can still have a RightFax server on site. When someone sends a fax, instead of grabbing a line card and sending it out on one of the enterprise trunks, or even via fax over IP to a gateway and out on a trunk, it moves that file into the cloud, and the resources in the cloud send it. Actually, the RightFax resources end up being the one that actually sends the fax. So if on Monday you send 10 faxes, and on Tuesday you use 10,000, it doesn't really matter. You can send and receive any number you need, and RightFax hardware is the buffer that makes that possible. So it's a nice cloud-based telephony piece for fax. It makes it very easy for people that do a lot of channels. It is highly secure, and we can talk with people offline on that. And it's a nice way to cover fax. The way this works is you pay for faxes by pages. So you buy 1,000 pages or 10,000 pages of fax, and you simply draw down against those. When it gets low, you buy some more pages of fax, and you keep it in business. And there's a tiered pricing model like all cloud models. And it's a very interesting model depending on what your fax traffic looks like. So that's something we're happy, again, with individual customers to talk about offline. IP6 support for all of our products, although not all of our partner products. But for us, we certainly can use IP6 on our servers. But if you have the Nuance speech rec, an AccuLab card, the Never Fail software, you will also have to have IPv4 supported at the same time. You can still use IPv6 for all your external communications, but you'll have to have dual support on our servers, which is okay. Those work fine. And some of the integrations do not support IPv6, and they most likely never will. Things like the Cisco Skinny implementation, the Mitel MiTi implementation. Those will probably require having IPv4 around for a long time. As well as the kind of major product and environment enhancements, there is always a raft of other improvements that are in the system. Sometimes we don't even know about these until the software release document comes out. They're just things that we came across while we were in maintaining software, and we'll go through these real quickly as well. A couple of these I don't think we talk about, like there's new ASR languages available, and we changed some of our prompt sets. So some of that, it's just only of interest to you if you're using those specific features. We did release new versions of both the mobile clients, the iOS and the Android one, that are using the drawer metaphor, which is very popular now in mobile apps. And by doing this, we actually now, for an administrator, they can support Android and iOS much more easily because they have the same look and feel, whereas before they didn't. So this is kind of a common look and feel you're seeing across mobile devices, and we added that. And we added other things in it, like the ability, if you don't want to have messages showing on a system-wide basis, you can turn off various functions, messaging being one of them. And then just some nice user features that make this app easier to use. If you're not using our mobile app, you really should look at it. If you're a mobile person, it does make life much, much easier. We also went into our web app, Web Phone Manager, and added the same kind of user improvement, the ability to mark multiple messages at once to process them, the ability to delete one message from the trash and leave the other messages there, and now F5 will refresh that screen as opposed to refreshing the browser and taking you back to the login page. So just some nice, feedback from customers. It's a wonderful thing, and we put it on the list. We do listen. Sometimes customers are a little upset we don't respond fast enough, but we do listen. It just takes us a software release or two sometimes to get to everything. We made some changes to the alternate telephone user interface for AutoX. Some of these are for specific ways that AutoX might have been deployed in an enterprise. Some are actually changes. If you want to still use the AutoX interface, but you didn't like some of the things in the AutoX, like the ability to mark a message unread and skip to the next message, we added some of those things in. So if you're using the AutoX interface, you can get the new AutoX user guide and see how this works now. And speaking of which, we did a refresh on all the user guides, or the quick reference cards. And these are the cards that are available that show how our alternate TUIs work. And they're great to take a look at if you're looking at buying a system and you're wondering, well, I have an ARIA or I have a Serenade. I wonder how close that interface really is going to be. You can get a hold of this card. Plus, we have a companion document that lists the Serenade interface, let's say, and our emulation side by side. So we have some nice documents on that piece as well. As we do these new software releases, there's a constant list of things we didn't get to that hopefully we can get to on the next version release. Because of the nature of unified communications and all the things we do on our platform and all the things we connect to, it's a fairly challenging process to maintain the software development like we do on these systems. We are the most interoperable product on the market by none. Even our competitors grant us that one. And that means that we have a lot to do every time we have a new software version. So you notice Skype for Business is up here now along with Link. That's the new version and name for Link, and we've had to do all the integration testing for that as well. So you will find every software release we do, a good part of what we do is done to make sure that your enterprise is going to work okay. So that's what we have in 8.6 and 8.6 Software Update 1 and 2. And coming down the road shortly will be 8.7. Probably be maybe 4 weeks or so. You'll probably start seeing some advanced webinars on that one as well. And now the very favorite slide, we're ready for questions.
Okay, great. Thanks, Neil. We do have a few questions coming in. Just a reminder, if you want to put in a question, go ahead and use the orange arrow in the upper right corner, and you'll expand the window, and you should see the question box toward the bottom. Neil, first question, with TeamQ, can agents log into multiple queues?
Yes, an agent can be set up so that they will show calls from multiple queues, and on those you can have a column there. I don't think I'm showing it on my screenshot, but you can have a column there that actually would show the name of the queue. So as an agent, I could see all the ones I'm looking at, plus I could tell which queue each one of those calls was in.
Okay, great. Okay, question about the mobile app. Is there the ability to hide features per user?
No, not today. Today it's a system-wide person. Now, some features get hidden by user anyway. If I have a user who's storing their messages in Exchange, let's say, then the message inbox will be hidden by default because there's nothing for them to see. So there are some features that can be controlled by a mailbox that would eliminate some of that. But the whole category of getting rid of things like you didn't want access to the call log or something like that, those are all on a per system basis right now.
Okay, next question. Where can I read more about the auto attendant scheduling feature?
Perfect. Okay.
The easiest way is probably just to contact us, either your vendor or us directly, and there's both a technical document and a white paper that talks about how it works and how you would use it.
So actually on that one, we also have a customer-focused webinar. Our training department is putting that together, and it is next week, and then offered again on the 21st. So when I do the follow-up email, I'll make sure to include that info. That's just for customers. So if that applies to you, I'll send that information to you as well. Next question, Neil, is 8.7 out of beta yet? I don't know if is it in beta, out of beta?
It's actually pre-beta. We're looking for betas, and we've started to process the paperwork, but I don't think we've actually installed the betas yet.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll make sure again that information gets to that person who's asking. Is 8.6 supported in Hyper-V virtual environment?
8.6 is not. It is something we're expecting to have support for in 8.7. Although 8.7 is code complete, but not testing complete. And what that means is we put all the code in, and that's why we're ready for beta, but we haven't finished all the testing. So I haven't heard for sure yet whether 8.7 will have Hyper-V support or if it'll come in a software update after. But it is coming soon.
Okay. Another question about the mobile app. It says, I believe you can't get your messages to the mobile app if you have a unified license and are getting them sent to the email server. Is this true? I guess if you want to just clarify on the licensing for that.
Sure. So what the mobile app does when you look at the inbox is look at messages stored on CX. If you have a UM license, which would allow you to put your messages into Exchange or some other email as your store, you would get those messages on your mobile through the same client you're getting your email. So there's really no need to get them from our client. So let's say I have Exchange and I have a UM license and I'm set up to store my messages in Exchange or Office 365. I'm probably using Exchange ActiveSync to push all my email messages down to my mobile phone, and along with that I would now be pushing my voice messages down since they are technically an email message in that server. So if you leave messages on CX, you get them through our client. If you put them into email, you get them from an email client.
Okay. On the change with the new VMware support, does this change anything for customers using NeverFail?
It doesn't change anything. Now the discussion about what NeverFail offers and what VMware offers becomes a little more detail-rich. For example, you might, as a new customer, now have to decide whether NeverFail was the way you wanted to do automatic failover, or you wanted to do it with VMware high availability and fault tolerance. The features don't conflict with each other, but it definitely is a discussion now that has more elements in it. And we're happy to talk to any individual customer. That being said, if you have NeverFail and you want to deploy NeverFail on VMware, it all works perfectly. You haven't lost any functionality at all.
Okay. Do we have an undelete feature for deleted messages?
We have an undelete feature from the telephone user interface. So if I'm in my mailbox and I delete a message and I realize, I better keep that one, in that interface, you can go get that. Now, only certain telephone user interfaces support that, and I would have to get you a list offline. But, if it wasn't supported in the system we emulate, like if Serenade didn't support that, then using the Serenade interface won't support it either, since there wouldn't be any keystrokes for it. But if you're using the Call Express interface, it's certainly there. You also have the ability from our our web client, Web Phone Manager. When you delete a message, it goes into the deleted file, and you can control how those get cleared out, whether they stay in there and you manually empty the trash, or they empty the trash when you log off. And also, if you're using Outlook, let's say, and delete a message, it will go in the deleted folder where you still have access to it. So from the phone interface, that's the easy one to answer. If you're using CX or one of the compatible telephone user interfaces, you definitely have an undelete capability.
Okay, next question. How would administrators...
Actually, I'm tempted to expand on that one really quickly. Because people ask that question for a couple of different reasons. The other thing you can do with CX, which is very unique, is you can set it up to back up the message store every night and have a running directory. So Monday nights it backs it up to that directory, Tuesday to that one, etc. User gets a message on Monday, listens to it, deletes it on Tuesday, realizes how important it is, comes to the administrator on Wednesday and says, is there any way you can get that message back? The administrator can actually take that Monday night backup where we had that message and restore that user's messages from that backup to their mailbox without destroying the other messages that are in there and while the system is running. So there is kind of that second level of undelete a message with administrator help that's available if you have that backup set up as well.
Okay. Let's see. If we're using a 4-digit user extension on our switch, are we limited to a 4-digit mailbox number for the auto attendants?
No, there's actually no forced correlation between mailbox number and length and extension length. There's a couple of rules we have to follow, and that is all mailboxes have to be the same length. So you can't have users with different mailbox lengths. But within those mailboxes, you can have different extension number lengths. And now if you're doing that on a single system, you need to be careful, like if I have a mailbox 4444 and a mailbox 44444, where we have to be careful how that's going to set up and work. But if you have a situation where you have two telephone systems, one has 4-digit extensions, one has 5-digit extensions, that kind of thing, we can handle that without any problem.
Okay. Next, how would administrators be notified if the system no longer has access to the Internet?
We're going to send them an email. Part of the reliability tab now when you go in there will let you set up the address that you want to be notified specifically for license failures.
Okay, excellent. Okay, well, it looks like that might wrap up the questions here. And certainly if you have any future questions, you can always email us at info@avst.com.
To learn more about AVST, please visit www.avst.com.